A mere 25 races ago, William Byron snuck by a crash on the final lap of the Daytona 500 to claim his second straight win in the Great American Race. Since then, 13 other drivers have joined him in victory at a myriad of facilities on the Cup Series calendar. Denny Hamlin found wins at Martinsville, Darlington, Michigan, and Dover. Shane Van Gisbergen matched Hamlin's 2025 win total at Mexico City, Chicago, Sonoma, and Watkins Glen. Christopher Bell snagged victories at Atlanta, COTA, and Phoenix early in the year, while Kyle Larson pulled away from the field at Homestead, Bristol, and Kansas. William Byron tacked on another win at Iowa to notch the regular season title, and that left just 4 multi-win drivers on the season, while Josh Berry won at Vegas, Austin Cindric broke through at Talladega, Joey Logano snuck past the field at Texas, Ross Chastain triumphed in the World 600, Ryan Blaney strutted his stuff in Nashville, Chase Briscoe rode on fumes at the finish at Pocono, Chase Elliott survived Atlanta, Bubba Wallace kissed the bricks at Indy, and just last week, Austin Dillon gave us a sequel that was better than the original by landing a playoff spot at Richmond Raceway. With just one race remaining before the playoffs begin, the 22 winless full-time stars of the NASCAR Cup Series possess one final opportunity to grab a trophy and a golden ticket to the postseason. It sounds simple enough until you realize that this cutoff race takes place at Daytona International Speedway under the lights. A 400-mile traffic jam where drivers run bumper to bumper remains an amazing spectacle to see, but one tire failure, one mistimed block, or one bobble could lead to half of the field having their day ended. Over 160 laps, fans will also be keeping up with the points battle as a new winner threatens the playoff hopes of Alex Bowman and, to a lesser extent, Tyler Reddick. Bowman sits a comfortable 60 points ahead of Chris Buescher, but he's on the bubble, meaning if a new winner comes out of the Coke Zero Sugar 400 tonight, Bowman's playoff hopes reside in the failures of Tyler Reddick. Reddick sits just 29 points ahead of Bowman, which is a tough mountain to climb for the 48 team. Reddick kept his 45 team in the top 10 in points all season long and looks to mirror his second-place finish from Daytona to finally punch his ticket to the postseason. The chance to stake your claim at history is here. What will you do? Will you be the first to the checkers or the first on the wrecker?
Thank you so much, Tanner, for such a wonderful introduction. Welcome, everyone, to Grid Live Pre-Race. Tanner Smith, editor of Pitbox Press, with that introduction. We got Matthew Bro from GridNetworkTV.com, and I, myself, Joe Samaniego. Big thank you to our Patreon investors, Colin, the Shell, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew, for investing in the Grid Network each and every month. Link in the video description, and you could do YouTube Super Chat, buy me a coffee while we're on the air. If you're watching us and we're not on the air, you're watching on pre-recorded, we'll thank you the next time we go on the air. And visit us, GridNetworkTV.com, and across social media at Grid Network TV. Now, gentlemen, let's get started with all the action, but we start with some news out of Daytona, some breaking news about 30 minutes ago about Ram's efforts in 2026. Collig Racing will be the factory-supported team in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series in 2026. They will have up to 5 trucks at Daytona in February. Collig is currently a Chevrolet team in the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series. They have, of course, several wins in both series. They played a big role when it came to helping Shane Van Gisbergen transition to the Cup Series last year with a partnership with Trackhouse, which is, of course, another Chevrolet-supported team, one of the top Chevrolet-supported teams in the Cup Series. Matthew, going to start with you. Your initial thoughts on the news, and could this negatively impact Collig's relationship with Chevrolet?
It's one thing. I think we all have to be really excited for it, Joe. And I also want to think that was a great intro, by the way, Tanner. Got me hyped up, even though I'm just sitting here. We're all ready for tonight. But yeah, it's definitely very exciting to see not only Ram back. Granted, you can argue that it's just the nose and the rear clips. That's really the only difference in a lot of these vehicles. But for Collig to try as hard as they can to give us something that we already knew was happening and saying, oh, we don't even, what is Ram? Like Matt Collig and them over there, Chris Wright, tried as hard as they could, even though everyone almost knew what was happening. over there. But no, it's exciting. And I think a real giveaway was hosting this event at Daniel Dye's father's dealership. And I was like, oh, so maybe Collig was going truck racing. But awesome. 5 trucks. I think the biggest takeaways is 5 trucks. Probably not all full-time. Maybe like a couple, maybe 2 to 3 drivers full-time, and then 2 that are like one-off drivers that might not be in the sport but have enough money to come in and do a couple races. I think it opens up the door for a lot of good opportunities for some drivers, especially now that Collig goes from a mid-tier Xfinity team and even mid to lower team Cup team to now the number 1 team for a manufacturer in the Truck Series. That's pretty sweet deal. I don't think you can argue with that. I'm going to be interested to see what happens though with the manufacturers. Granted, it's happened before where teams have driven different manufacturers in Cup and Xfinity. Usually the lower teams, kind of like a Rick Ware Racing, Premium Motorsports, they throw out a Chevy one week, a Toyota another week, just depending on the driver and the financial backing, obviously. I will be interested to see if Daniel Dye plays a huge role in the truck team, because obviously he has truck experience, but how it's going to work now with contracts and manufacturer alliances, because you don't really want your driver racing multiple times with Dodge or Ram and then coming up and racing with Chevrolet or Ford, Toyota, so on and so forth. But I think it opens up the door. I know the rumors, Garrett Mitchell, a.k.a. Cletus McFarland, I'm going to call him by his real name. Mitchell is one of the rumored drivers to race for Ram. I don't know if those rumors have died out, but he could possibly be one of them. I think you got guys who have talked with Ram before and some guys who aren't racing in Xfinity or trucks that have a lot of talent. I think a guy like maybe one of the Rifes, maybe Spencer Gallagher has a lot of talent too. He's won before. I think he could be a possible step up in the right direction. So I'm more excited to see who goes truck racing for this team, because I think we already kind of knew that this was happening. But that's my long spiel about that. It's just awesome to see 4 different OEMs in this sport. And soon enough, hopefully, the next time we can have a big conversation like this, either Honda or someone else is joining by the time I'm almost 30 years old. So I don't know. Well, I guess we're going to see what happens. But as you can tell, I'm quite excited to see this play out.
As am I, Matthew, and thank you for giving me props on the intro. You will see it later today when the NASCAR newsletter drops on Pitbox Press. But anyhow, as far as my takeaways from this Dodge news with Collig Racing, I think that, I do feel pretty connected to some folks around the sport, and I did catch wind of this a while ago, but it seemed like there was water kind of dumped on that fire as soon as it caught any sort of, major coverage. So I decided to keep my cards to myself on this one, but I'm glad to see that this ended up coming to pass. I think that for Ram getting into the sport, I think it's important that they have a team with a lot of infrastructure already in place to kind of help them get going and get off the ground. I think that with Dodge's initial re-entry into the sport, into the Cup Series back in 2001, which if you go back to those races around that time, it was a big to-do. I think something that held them back was not having a team that was super established, kind of helping them along outside of Chip Ganassi Racing. And even then, they had gone through a complete reorganization midway through the previous year to help facilitate Dodge coming into the sport, and they fell off right away. Whereas I feel like Collig has been, a pretty stable presence, not only in the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series, but, just the fact that they have, been a race-winning organization. They've made multiple Final Fours in Xfinity. I think that will be something infrastructure-wise and confidence-wise that Collig can help bring over to Dodge and the Ram contingent that they're bringing in for trucks. As far as, thinking about their relationship with Chevy, I mean, they're definitely going to be a lame duck team for 2026 in the NASCAR Cup Series, which will be unfortunate for sure for those drivers, namely AJ Allmendinger. And I don't know if they'll keep Ty Dillon, because Ty Dillon, as we know, is connected mainly to Richard Childress Racing, which is and has always been a Chevy GM organization. for as long as I can remember, for as long as history can detail. So I feel like Ty Dillon could be possibly on the move as early as this season. I think that whoever takes that second Collig ride, assuming Dillon doesn't keep it, they'll definitely be one of the first guinea pigs for the new Dodge car that comes to the Cup Series. God knows what model they're going to bring. But this is a really exciting time to be part of the sport, whether you're part of the media, whether you're part of one of the teams. Having a new manufacturer come in and spend a ton of money to, help enhance the careers of multiple drivers, teams, crew members, etc., is amazing and something that we should all look forward to and greet with open arms. And I think that, with Ram and Dodge coming back in, this is a really great opportunity for a fifth manufacturer to come in, as Matthew detailed. I know that Honda has been, trying to break into the sport potentially for the last 5 to 10 years, but they've just been looking for the right time to do it. I see no better time than now, and I hope that we get some more news regarding this going forward. But Joe, I'm interested. What do you think about all of this with Collig and Dodge Ram?
I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it all plays out when it comes to the long-term relationship, because first thing I thought of right away was what happened when Toyota was coming in and you have Bill Davis Racing. It was a Dodge team, but relationship sort of soured. You notice how the 22 car back then, all the Dodge branding was gone. It looked a lot more generic. They didn't get the support. Now, could that hurt Collig? I feel like Collig's not exactly one of the top level Chevrolet teams out there, so I think it's going to be very interesting to see how that's really going to change. Especially, there seems to be more house with RCR, more of a customer team role. So I'm really curious to see where RCR, their relationship will go, and how much will that change over time. Because I feel like with the Truck Series, okay, that's one thing, but everyone's just assuming right now. You got Ram in trucks. Before you know, there's going to be a presence in the Cup at some point. But this leaves me with a question for you both, because I mentioned about RCR, that relation. Now it comes down to drivers. Who do you think is most likely to be linked to the Ram deal, Matthew?
Oof, that's a good one. You probably have to assume someone like maybe Daniel Dye is going to do part-time. I guess Garrett Mitchell, Cletus. I find it very hard to call him that, but Cletus McFarland, yeah, he's probably one of them. I don't know. There's those rumors that they might do a reality show somewhere to get a driver. I know they did it way back before I existed. I think Roush or Ford, someone did that. Maybe you guys not much older than me, but maybe you could touch on that more. I don't know if Kurt Busch won a ride. Somebody who actually participated in that show got a ride and then became really a really good driver. I don't know. Maybe they go after maybe a female driver too, or a woman driver. Sorry. I don't know who might bring money from ARCA. Isabel Robusto seems pretty tied down with Toyota, but I would love to have her get a shot someday in trucks. Tony Breidinger, I think, is going to stay with Toyota for the time being. But then you got other guys too. I mean, a lot of good drivers in this field. I mentioned Spencer Gallagher could be one, maybe the Rifes. I don't know if you see another one car or one truck team. I don't know if CR7, Rackley, one of those teams who are powered by Chevrolet and everything. I don't know if they make the jump. So maybe one of their drivers goes over there too. I couldn't tell you, but even looking at the standings right now, does someone like maybe Chris Wright, someone who has a lot of money, go put that money towards a Collig truck ride? I think there are a lot of things we can predict and a lot of things we might know ahead of time. But I think in terms of who are going to field these 5 trucks, like which 5 drivers are going to occupy them, how many are full-time, so on and so forth, I don't know who it is going to be. But then looking at trucks, I don't know. Maybe someone I was texting a buddy of mine, maybe Matt Crafton could go as maybe not a full-time driver, but maybe to kind of be a consultant because he's existed and he's been around the Truck Series. Obviously a lot longer than Collig has existed and a lot of other teams, frankly, too. But Yeah, I'm just looking through the standings here on my phone. I don't know who else would really take that opportunity. There's a lot of young talent in Ford, I think, too. Maybe be on the lookout for some ARCA guys, maybe some Cars Tour guys. I guess I'm just super excited. I wish I could tell you who I knew was going to be there, but I just don't.
Yeah, I don't really have much of a concrete clue of who's going to make it, but I think we should start with Collig Racing's current roster, which entails Christian Eckes, who Collig coincidentally clarified last month that Christian Eckes has, and I quote, a Collig Xfinity racing contract. So I'm a little curious about what they mean by that. I'm also curious if they're going to continue in the NASCAR soon-to-be O'Reilly Auto Parts series. But I think overall, I think Daniel Dye is clearly going to be dropping back down to the truck series to help develop Ram. I think that it would behoove them at Collig Racing and Ram in general to have like a significant veteran be part of their stable, whether that be Grant Enfinger or someone like Matt Crafton, even if it's not in a driving role. Having somebody with multitudes of experience, lots of winning experience, I think will be very important. Having drivers like that as part of your roster will be, super integral to helping get that program up to speed and get into race winning shape as soon as possible. I think another thing that'll probably go, kind of under the radar is what will the surrounding team look like around all these drivers? Like what crew chiefs, what up and coming crew chiefs, car chiefs, pit crews, who all is making the transition over to Dodge and their new program. But as far as drivers are concerned, I think we could see probably Butterbean end up as part of this deal. I mean, he started out with Toyota in the truck series, and now he's with GM at Pinnacle. But I don't foresee that sticking for some reason. So I feel like maybe he is a candidate for someone to move over to the Dodge program. Obviously, Garrett Mitchell, a.k.a. Cletus McFarland, I think that he's got a solid shot to possibly land a ride with all of his funding that he's going to have. Outside of that, though, I mean, there's a ton of developing prospects. I mean, Laney Bice, she's out there. I think that she has shown a lot of pace in her Cars Tour starts and some of her ARCA starts as well. Isabella Robusto, I think, as Matthew mentioned, while it'd be great to have her and help develop her as a driver in the NASCAR Truck Series, I think that she's pretty tied down with Toyota at the moment. But someone like Jade Avedissian, I think that she might be able to come in and help propel that program, maybe even bringing back someone like Haley Deegan. So I think there's a lot of talented drivers in the Cup through ARCA series. It's just about picking the right ones that you think will meld together and make your program as fast as possible. One name that you should look out for is Justin Haley. I think that Justin Haley is in a very interesting position right now with his current Cup team, Inspire. And I think that if he ends up becoming a free agent at the end of this season, or maybe even before that, I think that he could be a really good candidate to drop back down to the Truck Series, help rebuild his stock. I mean, the guy is only in his early 20s, I'm pretty sure. So, he's still got a ton of time left. But I think someone like Justin Haley, who has a very great, resume built up from the lower series, I think someone like him dropping down to the Truck Series to help develop Collig truck team with people that he's worked with before during his time with the team, I think that would be a match made in heaven. I mean, if you think about it, guys, we've had, Zane Smith go back to front row. We've had, a number of drivers go back to teams that they've worked with before. So, I mean, it's not completely out of the question, I don't think.
Following this news as it continues to unfold. Bob Parker just tweeted, Collig will continue to field Chevy in Cup and Xfinity while fielding Rams and Truck. Ty Norris said they understand they will have firewalls put up to keep each manufacturer satisfied with respect to any proprietary information. The team will add 50 plus people for the truck program. 50 plus people, 5 trucks a Daytona. Very ambitious. It's going to be very interesting to see how this all goes. And of course, as this news continues to evolve, I'm pretty sure Ben and Brandon Encore will have more about it, as well as Kobe and the gang over at Grid tonight. And of course, we're still anticipating more news about 2 p.m. Eastern. We'll be following that as well too once it breaks. Of course, we're all at Daytona for the big reason. It's all coming down to tonight, hopefully, depending on the weather, for setting the Cup Series field. Tyler Reddick, Alex Bowman, they are both in the top 16, but when it comes to how they got in there, it's by the points. They don't have wins. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they stack up when it comes to today's race, because Alex Bowman started on the front row just outside the pole. Ryan Blaney, the pole sitter. Tyler Reddick is starting on row 13th, 27th. This means that 29-point cushion they had, it's all of a sudden dropped down to 2 points over Alex Bowman when it comes to the start of the race when the green flag drops. When you look at the history of Stage 1 in this race, the last 2 Coke 0400s had a caution-free Stage 1. But 2023, so 3 years ago, multi-car crash that took out some of the big names involved with the playoffs. And of course, anytime there's a big one, you're in the wrong place, wrong time, you're in trouble. So Tanner, does Bowman put Reddick in a bad spot? And how does Reddick and the team approach the race?
I mean, obviously I can't speak for Tyler Reddick, Billy Scott, and the 45 team, but how I would approach the race is I feel like you have to have Dale Jr.'s approach in mind, where you need to be up front to avoid most of the crashes. I feel like riding around in the back, you can still get ARCA braked into and get run over. So I really don't think that that is necessarily the best strategy. That said, I think that if it were me, I would stay up close to the front. I would try to get points in the first stage, hopefully pretty solid points, which means, in my opinion, finishing 6th or better, so you can get 5 or more points. I think obviously you'd like to get another playoff point by winning a stage or possibly winning the race, but we all know that that's a bit of a lottery here at Daytona International Speedway. As far as the 48 team, though, they control their own destiny, in my opinion. I think that they need to go out and try to win the race. I don't think they need to do anything stupid, because you have to stay in the race to win the race. I don't think that it's in Alex Bowman's character to do anything untoward to the 45 team or Tyler Reddick, so I don't think that'll be a problem. I also don't think that Bowman's race is necessarily with Reddick tonight. It's with the rest of the field, the other 21 drivers that he's dueling against. Now, if he's able to leapfrog Reddick in points, I'm sure he'll take that. But I think that it's far more likely that he ends up battling who ends up trying to take the last playoff spot from him, because he's on the bubble tonight. So I think if you're the 48 team, you control your own destiny. Just don't do anything stupid. Keep yourself in the race and fight to the end. If you're the 45 team, again, staying in the race is of the utmost importance. I would try getting some stage points.
Yeah, I think there are no two drivers in a more confusing and there's so many different routes they can go. And Reddick, I truly believe, just has to go points racing. I know everyone tries to go points racing, but it's a little different when you come to a super speedway, especially Daytona International Speedway. For Tyler Reddick, who has won on super speedways before, runner-up Daytona 500 finish. The previous year, Alex Bowman, runner-up Daytona 500, I believe. So with these two, I think Reddick has to try to go points racing like Tanner says. I think he needs to get as many stage points as possible, because if he doesn't, the way Reddick's luck has been this season is that he will wreck out. Alex Bowman will have a great points day, and someone like Riley Herbst or Cody Ware is going to come out of nowhere and kick Reddick out of the playoffs. So I think for 23XI's sake, their best case scenario would be for Reddick to go points racing and someone like Riley Herbst to magically somehow defy the odds and win today. But it's interesting though, because then you look at Alex Bowman, who is just a mere some random driver winning that hasn't already won this season, and he's out unless Reddick has a horrible day. And the thing is, which is on Bowman's side, if you look at averages, I would argue, besides John Hunter Nemechek, who actually has the lowest average finish here in recent races, with guys who have raced all 7 Daytona races in the next gen era, there has been nobody better that hasn't found victory lane than Alex Bowman. In his 7 starts, he has a 10.4 average finish. He has 2 top 5s, 4 top 10s, and 6 top 20 finishes. So Alex Bowman knows he is more than capable of going out here and having a great day and probably winning. He has been arguably the hottest driver on the grid in probably the last 8 to 10 weeks, if you don't count SVG winning every road course. But if you count how much Alex Bowman has shifted from his couple DNF instances and incidents, really, and then have him come out and he's just been hot out of the gates. We talked a lot about it last week when he was runner-up at Richmond. So I think Alex Bowman is in the worst pickle because he could win both stages, and if Reddick still scores enough points, and then someone like Ryan Preece or Chris Buescher or anyone in the field, John Hunter Nemechek wins this race, Bowman is on the outside looking in. So I think Bowman has to do his best to put Reddick in a bad spot, but if you're coming to the line and Reddick's in first and Bowman's second, I don't think Bowman's going to try to do anything risky, kind of like a couple years ago with he's not going to help him, but if you remember when Reddick already had multiple wins and he pushed Austin Dillon to victory, where Cody Ware almost had a chance at Daytona. That was when most of the field wrecked because of rain, but still, doesn't matter. So it's just going to be a strategic race for Bowman and Reddick, and I think we'll know by midway through stage 1 if they're going points racing or if they're going to really try to put it all out there and go for the win. So if I'm Reddick, I'm points racing. If I'm Bowman, I'm stressed.
Very stressed situation for both teams. Stage 1, if it goes caution free, I think Alex Bowman has to feel pretty good. Hendrick Motorsports seems to have the advantage when it comes to a faster car. 10 stage points. If for some reason Tyler Reddick does not score any stage points, that's only 19 points. That could really change in stage 2, depending on how pit stops go, the race goes, of course, potentially the big one. All sorts of factors. I think Tyler Reddick, if he could go out there, somehow get to the front, just keep that buffer. Because if you enter 29, 30 points ahead of Bowman by that third and final stage, you know you're in a pretty good spot. It's just a matter of avoiding the craziness that seems to happen with this race. Starting up front, usually the most guaranteed way you're going to avoid all the craziness. So for Ryan Blaney, no qualifying because of rain, weather issues. He's going to be on the pole based on NASCAR qualifying metrics. Bowman, Larson, Logano, Cindric, Hamlin, Byron, Briscoe, and Keselowski are your top 10. And in fact, out of the 20 drivers in the top 20, only 7 of them are winless this year. So you got an interesting mix, Matthew. Could you see a situation where those drivers with the wins are going to be driving on a different level compared to the drivers that are winless, maybe a different level of aggression, and especially on that first stage where you want to get towards the front?
I think that's an interesting question too, because I think everyone's going to be aggressive, but it's like if you're racing for just the win and nothing else, like a lot of these guys who are already locked in, are they going to be more aggressive than a guy like Ryan Preece or any RFK Ford? I think we mentioned a couple weeks ago, RFK could either have 3 guys in the playoffs or none, and it's looking more like none at this point. So I think Keselowski is going to be a guy. He's got to be aggressive. Ryan Preece, obviously Chris Buescher, who was 1 year before. Keselowski's 1 year before. Priest hasn't, but he's going to win sometime. I think he turned into a not an if but when driver, especially Priest has had an incredible season this year. But if you're like someone like Hamlin who just wants to win, are you going to be, if you're behind someone like Reddick, who are you going to push him or are you going to move him out of the way? I feel like Hamlin wouldn't care. I think Hamlin's going to move him regardless. But in terms of like your Toyota teammates, your Ford teammates, who are you going to help versus who are you going to try to hinder? I think it's going to be 3 races in one. I think stage 1's going to happen. It's probably not going to be that aggressive. I hate the idea that what we saw out of Xfinity, and then you go, I think it was Justin Haley even made a comment like, it was nice to race on a super speedway when you're not fuel saving the whole time. That's a telling tale of what we're probably going to see if the rain holds off. I know it's supposed to rain there from like 2 p.m. Eastern to 5 p.m. Eastern, and then lightning, obviously. But it looks pretty dry on the weather besides that. So, guys, it's tough. I think if you're outside looking in, you're going to be aggressive. And I think if you have teammates locked in already, if you're a teammate that's locked in and you have a guy like a Ty Gibbs who's not locked in, all of the RFK Fords are not locked in. But if you're Hendrick, I feel like doesn't really work. I don't think they would really try to push Bowman to the win. But then if you're Bubba Wallace and you're behind Tyler Reddick, are you going to try to help him out? Or if you're Riley Herbst, you know what I mean? So I think it's all going to happen in the spur of the moment. I really don't think there's going to be a lot of planning going ahead. I think there's going to be like, we have 3 ideas what's going to happen: plan A, plan B, plan C. Not the plan C from the F1 movie, but a different plan C. So I think, yeah, that's ultimately what it's going to be. It's going to be an aggressive race when they're not fuel saving, but I would expect them to fuel save most of it, which sucks, but that's a whole other conversation for a whole other day.
Hold on. My computer is being terrible. Anyhow, right you are, Matthew, about the fact that we're probably going to be seeing a decent amount of fuel saving, but thankfully not in stage 1. I think that in stage 1, with it being only 35 laps today, I think that we'll have a very even race to the finish line for that one, because everybody very well should make it to the end on fuel. As far as the rest of the race, though, and the differences between a nighttime and a daytime race, if you've ever been to Florida in any capacity in the daytime, it's really, really hot and humid there most of the time. So I think that if this race ends up getting transitioned to a day race in the middle of August, I think that could create a very intriguing race that would definitely allow for, a little bit more setup-based speed coming into play. And what I mean by that is, if you're racing on a very hot racetrack, you're more liable to like slip up and, have handling issues. And you'll see the cars that handle a little bit better make their way up through the pack. And it also, unfortunately, lends to more mistakes from drivers, especially in the turns. So I think that if this transitions to a day race, we might see a bit more chaos, more or less. However, if we end up racing tonight, track temperature is going to be a lot cooler. There's not going to be sunlight beating onto the racetrack. We're going to be racing under, LED lights. So we'll be, in a much more accommodating environment for this kind of racing, which might make the racing product itself less appetizing. As Matthew noted, we'll probably see a good bit of fuel saving tonight. We'll probably see, less stage 1, stage 2 nonsense happen, which I hope for, because I would like as many cars as possible to make it into stage 3 so we can really get a really big pack going and see, who is going to come out on top. But I think that if this race gets going tonight, whether it's tonight or if it's tomorrow, I think that it's going to be a really big challenge for anybody that's trying to actually win, because winning at Daytona is definitely more about luck than it is about, really anything else. So with all that said, I think that we're going to be in for an exciting race either way, assuming that we don't have to, watch cars ride at 50% throttle 4 wide, which everybody loves to, bring up every time that, we get to lap 20 in the middle of a run and cars are just spreading out to save gas and try to, sneak some track position in there. So hopefully we'll get the race in tonight, but if it comes out tomorrow, expect a really, really, really crazy race.
Bring up some really interesting points, especially that the first stage, fuel saving shouldn't be an issue at all. Everybody be very aggressive. I'm very curious, just because the way drivers are, a win is a win. They would like to get more wins without having to worry about getting more playoff points during the playoffs. Just get that win now in Daytona, get those playoff points. But you bring up a really good point, Tanner. That is the weather situation, the weather forecast for tonight. 50% chance of rain. We had lightning delay and the light rain yesterday during the Xfinity Series race. Of course, qualifying was postponed to Sunday. So you mentioned about how we could anticipate a crazy race. Would you say that's because nobody has had any track time? And for the drivers themselves, would they prefer to have a race tonight or tomorrow in the daytime?
I mean, I think that if we're talking about purely from a we don't want to wreck perspective, they'd probably want to race tonight, because I feel like if you're a driver, most of your sim time has been done at night with all the track conditions that go with it being at night. That said, not only that, they're going to be going on a green racetrack. All the rubber from last night's race is going to be gone, because there is definitively going to be rain at some point today in that area of Daytona. So a green racetrack with what I would consider green race cars, because they didn't get to practice or qualify, will already be a challenge in itself. But luckily with this style of racing, it really shouldn't affect it too much, because, again, you're racing more so in a pack. And I do feel like there will be some drivers that are still going to try to save some fuel during that first run, because there is the possibility that after the first stage, especially if there was a caution in stage 1, that you could stretch your fuel into the second stage far enough that you can pit in stage 2 early on, and then, basically with a group of cars, rocket your way back up into the lead by the end of the stage, assuming it plays out completely green. But that's thinking a little bit abstract. As far as coming into this race now having put a tire on the track all weekend on a completely green racetrack, that's definitely a daunting task. But I feel like for most of the drivers, I mean, they went through 2020 and 2021 where it was exactly like this. So I don't feel like it'll be too much of a challenge at this style of racing at this kind of track. I think that since most of your time is spent not trying to actually catch anybody or pursue anybody, it's just catching the air at the right time. I think we'll see the more savvy drivers at this style of racing make their way to the front pretty early, and hopefully we don't see somebody, try to get a little bit too ambitious too early and cause a multi-car accident in the first stage. But I have a feeling that it might be the number 6 car, if it's anybody, that causes a stage 1 crash. He has a penchant for doing this at this particular track on the exit of corners, and I know that he is in desperate need of a victory. So if you're, trying to make a prop bet for tonight, the cause of the first caution will probably be the 6 car in his chrome horn.
Yeah, like Tanner, I agree with a lot what Tanner said. In terms of, I think racing is just as much mental, I think, too. And I think all sports are mental. So if you have come in thinking you're going to do a night race and all this, and you're preparing in the sim and stuff like that for a night event, and then all of a sudden you're racing Sunday afternoon. It's like, I think they would probably much rather race tonight under the lights, and I know it's probably raining there right now. I actually had the weather pulled up. By the pace of Daytona, if you can see on my screen, I'm glad it's mirrored, we might have a championship race at Daytona if they have to postpone because of all the damn rain going there. But in terms of the guys, no track time, like you said, and it's almost like, who is going to be the first driver to be ambitious, to be like, hey, I think the track is fine. I'm going to push it a little harder. And maybe it could be someone like a Todd Gillen in the back, someone who knows how to lead these things. And I think best case scenario, luckily with the metric from last week, Blaney and Bowman starting in the first row, I'd argue not many other drivers I'd want to pace the field and lead than those two. Just Blaney's one of the best super speedway racers we see. The advanced auto parts scheme is scaring me for this weekend. I know Tanner would know. The joke with Blaney is it seems like he wins at Daytona when that's not his scheme, or Talladega, wherever. But when that is on his scheme, he's usually in the wall. That's when it is his scheme, I should say. The auto black and yellow one. But then you have guys, Larson, although he doesn't finish in the top 5, I think he's done a lot better at Daytona. And then you have Logano, Cindric, and Hamlin in 4th, 5th, and 6th starting. Again, who else would you rather have pace the field than someone like Denny Hamlin? And then the Penske Fords have been incredible on super speedways, especially in the next-gen era. They might not have a lot of luck. I know, obviously, Blaney's won. I don't think Logano's won super speedway in the next-gen era, if I'm not mistaken, but obviously Cindric won at Talladega. And he won the Daytona 500 too. So again, you have those 6 guys that I have previously mentioned all up front. They're going to be the ones to set the pace. But then you got to look at some guys. Keselowski's 10th. He needs a win. Is he going to be the aggressive one? Guys like Suarez, Zane Smith, Kyle Busch are 12th, 13th, 14th. Again, are they going to be like, hey, we've done well here before. We've won on super speedways before, whether it's Truck, Xfinity, or Cup. Are we going to push the issue? So I think that's what we're going to see. And I really don't think it's going to matter if you start first or 40th. I don't know if Casey Mears is going to be the car to beat tonight at any point, but I think the other 39 cars in the field realistically have a shot here. And that's the fun of Daytona. But when you talk about winning and in with the playoffs, that's not the fun part of Daytona sometimes, I feel, from a working perspective, not a fan perspective. So, yeah, like I said, like 48 minutes ago when I started talking, I think they would rather race tonight than tomorrow, which would be Sunday. I would, too. I have the Oxford 250 I want to watch tomorrow, and I would prefer not to have that clash with the Cup Series events because I'd be watching both of them. So, we'll see, guys. It's going to rain. It's Daytona. It's summer. That's what happens.
Summertime in Daytona just seems like it's inevitable. In the chat room, we got a comment. SVG times 4. I'm assuming that is another win for SVG. Could happen. You never know. I mean, it is Daytona after all. With that said, the lightning. So let's go ahead into a lightning round. 10 words or less for each answer. And overall, we'll get started with leading from the SVG comment, Shane Van Gisbergen. How likely is he to win at Daytona, the Coke 0400? Is it low, 50-50, or high? Starting with you, Tanner.
He has a 1 in 40 chance. He is entered into the race and he is participating. So I'm going to say that he has a perfectly reasonable 2.5% chance of winning this event.
I agree 50-50, but you can see him possibly.
I'm going to go 50-50. I mean, he's getting better and better. It's just a matter of what happens with the race all around him and avoiding into trouble. Best finishing RFK driver, Matthew.
Oof. I'm going to go Busch.
I think Keselowski is going to win this race or wreck trying. So I'm going with
I might have to go with Buescher as well, too. I think Keselowski, as you said, could be the driver that starts the crash. Casey Mears. Will he finish top 10, 20, or outside the top 20, Tanner?
Top 20.
I hope he finishes in the top 5 or 10, but more realistically, probably say outside the top 20.
I think if things were to go his way, like the tops have bad luck, he could be top 10, but top 20 would be a solid result for him. Matthew, does Daniel Suarez race solely for himself, even willing to not push a teammate?
He should. I think he's got to go out.
I think that Daniel Suarez will go for the win tonight, regardless if he's going to have teammate help or not.
I have to agree. Suarez in the situation, he needs to secure himself a future, go for the win. The last 2 Coke 600s have had overtimes, Matthew. Do you anticipate a third consecutive overtime finish tonight or tomorrow?
Yeah, probably, to give a little less of a lightning round question. It depends. The reason why I want to pick this out is NASCAR seems to love caution laps, and I think yesterday I said whatever it would be. It seems like they love caution laps, so I think if we see a wreck with like 6 or 7 to go, we're going to somehow end up in overtime regardless of how many cars wreck. So I would anticipate it. You like it for entertainment, but you don't like it for racing, I feel. So, yeah, probably.
Joe, I'm actually going to expand your question because in the last 10 years, we have only had 2 races in the summer Daytona race weekend that haven't gone to overtime. Those were 2019 when we ended because of a lightning and then a rain delay, and then in 2022 when rain killed 25 cars out of the field and we only had like 7 on pace at the finish of the race. So absolutely we're going to have overtime, probably more than 1 if I had to take a guess.
I'm thinking overtime too. And looking at some of the pictures from Daytona, it looks pretty wet. So we'll see if we can get this race started on time. I know we've talked a lot about different scenarios of a winless driver taking the win. All week long, we've been seeing about from Cody Ware's comment about shocking the world and potentially igniting the social media NASCAR community. We still have 14 drivers, of course, trying to get another win this season, and only a small handful with multiple wins. When it comes to those winners, of course, as you can see there, Denny Hamlin has the most at 4. You got 3 drivers with 3. William Byron has 2. Everybody else single digits. So Tanner, out of the drivers that already have a win, which driver do you think will benefit the most from a win at Daytona going into the playoffs?
In my opinion, it's anybody with only 1 win on their ledger to this point. Right now, it looks like 6th on down have only 1 win, and that's pretty bad coming into Daytona and going into the first round. Obviously, the Southern 500 is a feat of strength in itself. Gateway is going to provide a unique challenge, and the Bristol Night Race has, a very significant reputation for roughing people up. So I think that going into that first round, you should probably bank as many playoff points as you possibly can to give yourself enough of a buffer. But, looking at some of these drivers, I think the ones that would benefit the most, Ryan Blaney, obviously only has 1 win this season, even though he's had tons of speed, especially of late. In fact, last week, he became the first driver this season to have 5 consecutive top 12 finishes. Do you know how crazy that is? We have gone this far, 25 races into the season, and it took that long for somebody to get 5 consecutive top 12s, not even top 10s, top 12s. So Ryan Blaney would be a good pick there. Bubba Wallace would, significantly, stand to gain by getting another win. to help him get past the round of 16 and hopefully also the round of 12 for that 23 team. Joey Logano in an attempt to defend his title, that'd be, pretty significant for him. But, I mean, I think if we're looking at the bottom three here, Cindric, Barry, and Dillon, I think they really stand to gain the most because as far as the playoff field is concerned, I feel like those three are probably the most vulnerable to getting knocked out the first round because they are, in one way or another, either less experienced, less accomplished than practically everybody else that they're, in the grid with. And Austin Dillon and RCR in general just haven't really been terribly fast at most tracks this year, and we're not going back to Richmond in the playoffs, so he doesn't have his get-out-of-jail-free card. So of the ones that have won this year, I would say those are the ones definitively that stand to gain the most. But of the ones that have multiple wins, Denny Hamlin has the most to gain. You need to have as many playoff points as possible going into the postseason, and having that fifth win and that 25th playoff point, and I know he's got more from winning stages, but just from his wins, he would have 25 playoff points. Like, that'd be a really significant amount to be going into the season with that you can build upon through those first couple of rounds.
Yeah, my Google Chrome was being a silly goose. I hope you guys can hear me. I agree a lot with what Tanner said. However, I'm going to take a completely different route with who I think, which kind of shows here, Joe and Tanner and everyone listening, that I think it'll benefit every single driver because I'm going to go a different route. I think of the guys who have just one win, I'm going to argue Chase Elliott is a big one, solely because he only has 6 playoff points. Because he won one race and won a stage. Even though he is second in the regular season standings, he is going to drop behind Joey Logano, Bubba Wallace, Chase Briscoe, Ryan Blaney, and then the other multiple winners, obviously Bell, Byron, Larson, Van Gisbergen, and Hamlin. And Cindric has more playoff points. Josh Berry has the same amount of playoff points, and Ross Chastain has the same as well. So when you have a guy that consistent this year in Chase Elliott, who has had the 2 worst race weekends these past couple weeks than he has had in almost a full calendar year when you think about it, I think it's very important for him to get it done. But at the same time, I think guys too, Ross Chastain, Trackhouse has just been, sometimes it's like they don't even show up, it feels like. Because I know SVG has 4 wins this season, and Chastain has one in the arguably the biggest race of the year. But at the same time, when sometimes they just kind of, it seems like they're riding around. Like they'll qualify, they're all in the 20s or worse, and then they'll finish and they're all like 15th or worse. Trackhouse has a lot of quiet days. So I think it'd be important for Ross Chastain to get back into the playoffs. Obviously, he's clinched this year after just a few years ago making the championship 4 and haven't been remotely close to touching that again. So I think he's one of them. And then you look at the same guys, too. I think Cindric, Barry, and Dillon, I don't really have to touch on them. They just have the lowest of the race winners in points. Josh Berry, I think a big one because he has been absolutely not great at all by any stretch of the imagination since he did win at Vegas. He's just been very quiet, and even to the point where Shane Van Gisbergen is almost tied with him in points. And Shane only seems to do really well at 5 tracks this season, where he's got a minimum, I think, of 40 points each time he goes out there. So that kind of shows Barry's lack of, I think Barry's got to be a little worried going into the playoffs with just 6 playoff points as well. But then I think if you look at guys who have multiple wins, Bell's kind of been in a slump too. But I think Shane Van Gisbergen, the reason why I say that, because I think Tanner made a very valid point with Denny Hamlin, and it would be great for him to go in with a minimum of 29 total playoff points, considering Byron has, 17, and he'll get 15 more, I believe, when the playoffs start. I think I would say Shane Van Gisbergen, because obviously it's going to be his first time in the Cup Series playoffs. One of the tracks, I believe he's never even been to. And then Bristol, he put on the absolute worst clinic ever for a driver. It seemed like he was battling Cody Ware on pace at Bristol when they were there last, when Kyle Larson put belt to butt on every single driver in the field. So I think Shane Van Gisbergen, if he could somehow even get a stage win, that 1 point could possibly be the difference of getting him into the next round, where he is the favorite at the Roval. Obviously, even though he's never won at the Roval, he would still be the favorite because it's obviously Shane Van Gisbergen. So I think for the guys who have more than one win this season, I would say, honestly, I think it would be SVG to gain the most out of it, because that guy needs as many points as he can get if he wants to carry through at least the first round of the playoffs, which I really think he will. It just depends on how he does at his favorite oval, Darlington, track he's never been to, Gateway. And then I don't think he likes Bristol that much. He probably wouldn't. If I wouldn't either if I had that showing that he did, which obviously not really his fault, but at the same time it is. You know how it goes. Trackhouse has been inconsistent. That's my answer, right? So I pretty much named almost every other driver that Tanner didn't. So I'm curious to hear from you, Joe, how you feel about it.
SVG would be a driver where if he could get that fourth win, those playoff points, that just puts him a little bit higher up in the standings points wise, give him that bigger buffer, and I think he's going to need the help. Chase Elliott is a really good point, especially at only 6 playoff points. It really shows, I think, with this format, you could be consistent in the regular season. Yes, you could have one win in the regular season. Yes. But you're going to fall behind a driver that gets 2 wins or just score more playoff points. It almost shows that the consistency, while good, is no guarantee. And of course, people will talk about Martin Truex Jr. a couple years ago. Consistent, winless, missed the playoffs. Here's a driver that's consistent, winless, one win, but could be way down in the stands just because when it comes to the stage points, he's not there. So I think those are 2 drivers that could really benefit the most. Of course, Denny Hamlin, he would love to have a bigger gap, enter each round with that gap. I just think he's going to be somebody that would love to have that, but any driver with 1 win, if they could get just double their potential, they're in a good spot. One driver just wanted to get a win just so he could get in the playoffs. Kyle Busch, winless again. His teammate Austin Dillon secured himself into playoffs at Richmond. Last year, he was leading that last lap until Harrison Burton got that big push from a Chevrolet team. In fact, it was a 62 team. Got around, took the win, got into playoffs. Now, Kyle Busch, as usual, as we all know, he is very vocal. During a media session, he was asked how much does it mean to get in the playoffs. And Kyle Busch had an interesting answer. He said, quote, if you Harrison Burton your way into the playoffs, and then you're out in the first round, that doesn't mean, and I'm going to say crap of what Kyle said. Kyle continued a successful season and being in the playoffs, winning races, and being in the final 8. Now, I have to ask you, Tanner, does Kyle Busch have a valid point? Because we do see some drivers, a surprise win, they're in the playoffs, but then they go out in that first round.
My personal opinion is that if you don't finish the season in the top 10 in points, it was probably not that good of a year. I know that now is kind of complicated by the postseason and everything that goes into that, but I think that being one of the 10 best drivers all year and finishing ahead of 26 others in the final points is a significant accomplishment. As far as the validity of that statement, I think that he's kind of right. Like, Harrison Burton never had a chance last year after Atlanta, and even in that race, I'm pretty sure he got wrecked. So, it was pretty much over for him immediately. And that's why a lot of people, including myself, want to see the playoff format be altered in some way. And as we discussed on Grid Tonight this week after the schedule dropped for 2026, Ben Kennedy made sure to note that the 2026 schedule is set up in such a way that we should kind of ignore all the playoff markings that are on it because they haven't come to a complete conclusion on what they're going to do yet. So keep that in mind. But yeah, this is part of why I don't like this win and you're in 16 driver playoff format. I think it's extremely stupid, and it kind of liquidates the product of NASCAR down quite a bit and overall motorsports in general, because I really just don't think a stick and ball concept like a playoffs has anything has anything to do with auto racing. It should not be anywhere near it, and it shouldn't be part of it. But I'll save that soapbox speech for another day. I do think what Kyle Busch said is very valid, and as far as how important it is for Kyle Busch to make the playoffs, I mean, if you're talking about Kyle Busch the person, him winning a race would be really good for him, because it's been since June of 2023 since he's done it. But if we're talking about making the playoffs from a team perspective, a lot of money for the next 3 years gets dumped into your team if you make the postseason. And I think for Kyle, RCR, and the entire number 8 team, that would be more integral and more important going into next year and 2027, 2028, if he was able to land himself into the postseason, because the last time they made the playoffs was all the way back in 2023. So theoretically, next year would be when that playoff money from 2023 would run out and the clock resets. So, yeah, I don't think that Kyle Busch is off base in any way about the playoff format and, how it doesn't really mean anything to, get bounced in the first round. It just means that you weren't the contender you thought you were. And I think that it really wouldn't mean anything if they actually make the postseason, as far as like, it's not going to immediately turn the 8 team into a title contender. But at the same time, I think it would be good for the sport if Kyle Busch was part of the postseason. I mean, having a 2-time champion get bounced out of the playoffs for the second straight year just because he hasn't won would not be, the most ringing endorsement of the playoff format. So I think that if you're the 8 team, you obviously hope to win tonight for the monetary aspect and the momentum aspect, but I don't think that it helps them like wholesale too much, because they simply just don't have speed at many other racetracks.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Tanner said, especially about Kyle Busch. When you have arguably your greatest driver of all time in NASCAR, I can't really say motorsport, but NASCAR in terms of the top 3 series, and who's missing the playoffs 2 years in a row because he just can't win. But he would be. That's what it's interesting about winning you're in, is that just a mere couple years ago, the year Stenhouse won the 500, so that was 23. Everyone in the top 16 would have made the playoffs until the final race when Stenhouse fell out of the top 16 in points. Then you look at last year in 2024, Joey Logano wouldn't have made the playoffs if it was just the top 16, but he won, so he made it. But then you had guys like Ross Chastain, Chris Buescher, Bubba Wallace, and Kyle Busch all would have made it in on points, but they didn't make the postseason. So you look at that, and then you have this year, looking at it, Kyle Busch would be number 16 in the playoff standings. Right behind him would be Ty Gibbs, just 25 points off. That would be a fun battle going into who scores more points today, Kyle Busch or Ty Gibbs. Then you look ahead of him, Cindric has a win, Chastain has a win. Ryan Preece would be 13th in the regular season standings. He has no wins. He probably won't make the playoffs. Chris Buescher in 11th, no wins, probably won't make the playoffs. Alex Bowman, if someone else doesn't win, he's 9th. He probably won't make the playoffs. So it's just, or if someone else wins, yeah. So it's going to be close with him. That's what I'm getting at. Anyway, Kyle Busch absolutely has every right to say what he said. And Tanner, I know you mentioned no playoff in motorsport. I got a shirt idea for you if you look that up behind me. All right. But yeah, in terms of my bestseller. But if in terms of Kyle Busch, he has every right to say it. I think it definitely needs a formatting change. I don't mind playoffs to a certain extent, but when you see stuff like this consistently happen, where Martin Truex, almost Ryan Blaney that year, got screwed. And then you have a couple years ago, or this year now, with probably Priest or Busher. One of them is going to get screwed inevitably. I don't know if that's really a bad word, so I apologize. But that's really what's going to happen. And with your Kyle Busch being top 16 in points 2 years in a row and not making it, and then inevitably falling back to 19th or 20th in the standings, just because you couldn't win, and Richard Childress kept giving Austin Dillon the Richmond setup instead of you, it seems like. So, yeah, guys, it's very important for him to make it in terms of, I think he's still got it. It's really weird to say Austin Dillon has 2 wins and 1 playoff berth since the last time Kyle Busch found victory lane, which he did 3 times in one season. So, yeah, I think the playoff format, I've said this, I'll die on this hill multiple times, is that when you get an underdog victory like Harrison Burton, like if this year Cody Ware, Riley Herbst, John Hunter Nemechek, Eric Jones, any one of those guys, Cole Custer, somehow get a win, it doesn't feel the same, because now you know that a driver 30th or worse, Noah Gragson as well, 30th or worse in the standings, Justin Haley, I just keep thinking of guys, if they get in over somebody like Alex Bowman, who was 9th in the standings, and now the best he can finish is 17th. I forgot Chase Elliott last year too, about the standings. I don't know what's going on up in my head. But yeah, it kills the whole vibe of underdog victories. I think Harrison Burton's was truly such an exciting thing to happen, especially Lee Diffie. I love Lee Diffie. I'm number 1 in the Lee Diffie fan club when it comes to how great I truly believe he is. He could make paint drying sound like the most exciting thing in the world. So if we have one of those calls again this year, I just wanted to bring that up too. And it's a Kyle Busch victory. Awesome that would be, because he was getting into the Kyle Busch spiel until Harrison Burton had Parker Retzlaff pushing him on the outside. I know we mentioned that. And then the racing gods have absolutely killed any momentum Parker Retzlaff has ever had since that very moment. It seems like anytime something can go wrong for that kid, it goes wrong now. I feel horrible for him. But that's my long rant. Yes, Kyle Busch has a valid point to answer your question. It is very important. I don't know if we're going to see it happen, though.
I don't think it's going to happen either. I mean, he could easily do it just because of the nature of Daytona, but it just seems like the bad luck, and it just sometimes seems he's right there in it. I just think it's not going to be in the cards for him. As for his point about Harrison Burton yourself into the playoffs, I know when this was first introduced, the idea of winning you're in, I thought it was great, because we've seen where drivers, they have that first win of the season and they're excited. It's a whole new level. Their first career win. It's a special moment. And I always thought just the idea that you could get your first career win and now you're in the hunt for potentially a playoff spot in this top 16, that's the ultimate high. But then we have these drivers like Harrison Burton. They get a win, they're out of the first round. Austin Dillon gets a win, out of the first round. We don't see that Cinderella story like I think a lot of people were sort of hoping, where you see a driver get a surprise win, get in the round of 12, 6, maybe 8, be that underdog story. I would say the best underdog story when it comes to the playoff and the chase format, especially the chase format, has to be Tony Stewart and that 14 team, winless in the regular season. Here comes a chase, and all of a sudden they're hard to beat, and they get that championship on a tiebreaker. I just feel it is to the point where if you have the system next year, I would like to see some adjustments, whereas maybe not when you're in, but maybe just make it where you win, you get so many more points, you're almost certain to get in, but it's not a guarantee. I just think that's something where NASCAR, they'll probably be evaluating as more talks about playoff changes does occur. With that said, let's go into talking about some winners this weekend. Hopefully winners for us. Pick a winner. Encourage everyone in the chat room, comment with who you think is going to win. We got 3 races we're going to pick winners for, but let's start with the one we just been talking about, the NASCAR Cup Series Coke Zero Sugar 400. And yes, all the scores have been updated because Marc Marquez did get that sprint win today. Tanner, starting with you, who is going to win the Coke Zero Sugar 400?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Joe. So, if you tuned into Grid tonight this week, I actually made my pick there, but I'll repeat it here. So, what I ended up doing, and this is what I do for all super speedway style races, I get Chinese food at some point during the week, and I get a fortune cookie. And this week I broke it open on air and showed everybody the stuff that I got, but unfortunately, I think that the glare is too strong and there's just not enough focus on my laptop's camera to ever get the numbers to read off right. But I got the number 34 as one of the numbers, so I decided to go with Todd Gilliland this weekend. I think that Front Row Motorsports has been in a pretty unenviable position. Obviously, they're usually the second team brought up in headlines about the antitrust lawsuit with NASCAR, and they haven't really made a whole lot of headway on the track this season with their new lineup of completely winless drivers at the Cup level. But we have seen flashes of Todd Gilliland being strong at these tracks before. Obviously, Atlanta last year, where he led the most laps and I believe won the second stage. I think that if Todd Gilliland can make his way up to the front this evening, I think he is liable to stay there. And after Austin Cindric did his 12 questions on the Athletic with Jeff Gluck this week, he mentioned that the one driver he'd be really excited to see win in the field that's not one of his teammates would be Todd Gilliland. So I hope that we'll get to see that moment in victory lane where Austin Cindric picks Todd Gilliland up and shakes him up and down.
Speaking of fortune cookies, Tanner, there is a driver's brother posted. They went to PF Chang's. I'm going to try to do the glare as well. I don't know if you can see. Thank you, Joe. That's a driver. Let me zoom out on my little iPhone right here. He looks familiar. He got a fortune cookie from PF Chang's that says victory is just around the corner. Although I'm not going to go with him. I think Cody Ware could get it done in that Arby's Jamoke. I'm not going to go with him. I think someone like Riley Herbst could also win that Monster Energy or Chumba Casino this week. So many guys I truly think can do it. And if you don't like the playoffs, I think you're hoping for one of those guys to do it, because I think that will make a huge marketing decision for NASCAR to see. Because if Corey Heim doesn't win the truck championship and Connor Zilic doesn't win the Xfinity championship, that's 0 for 2 in this playoff system. Now, if you get a Cody Ware, you get a Riley Herbst, a Cole Custer, Noah Gragson, John Hunter Nemechek, one of those guys getting it done, that would be crazy. However, that's the exciting part. I'm going to go with a guy who's won here before. He hasn't won this season. I think he could be a legitimate threat. His teammates, none of them are in, but I think he's the best here. I think he's from Prosper, Texas. I'm going to go with Chris Buescher. I think will be the guy to get it done if it's not one of those aforementioned guys who are 30th or worse in points. But I hope, Joe, Tanner, it is Cody Ware, it is Riley Herbst, it is one of those guys, because I would love to see this happen. From a fan, I'm not even being unbiased here. I'm just saying it would be so funny to watch it happen 2 years in a row where a guy 33rd or worse gets in. That is my rant. I will mute myself to prevent me from talking.
Oh, man. Social media is going to blow up if that happens, especially if it's Cody Ware and that 51 Arby's. Oh, my goodness. For my pick a winner, I think I'll say I'm going with a driver that people are not picking, but I think his equipment is just at that level where if you have a clean race, and for once, don't go airborne, he could get the win. I'm going with Ryan Preece, finally finishing the race on all four wheels, and he's going to do it in first place and secure his spot in RFK's only car in the playoffs. Now, let's go to a pick a winner where I think it's a lot more straightforward. MotoGP, of course, Marc Marquez won the sprint race earlier today for the Hungarian Grand Prix. So now they'll be racing tomorrow for the Hungarian Grand Prix race itself. Tanner, starting with you, who's going to win the MotoGP Hungarian Grand Prix?
It's Kiska's pick. I'm picking Marc Marquez.
Yeah, for me, under Tanner on the screen here, I think even if Mark Marquez started backwards at a different track, I would be confident enough this season to probably pick him again. And he's the reason why, part of the huge reason why I have 63 points right now. So I'm going to go Mark Marquez again, hopefully to get me to 64.
Yep, it's going to be unanimous, and I know Kiska's not changing her picks. Mark Marquez, I think just about everyone that did score a point picked Mark Marquez so far. Now let's go to a series where they don't have a Mark Marquez, but they have an Alex Palou. Alex Palou trying to get win number 9, trying to reach that 10-win season in a series with only 17 races. Tanner, Alex Palou, or somebody else at Milwaukee Mile?
Joseph Newgarden, next question.
That is a great pick. I'm going to stick with Alex Palou just because I want. It's more of those things you want to see it happen. I love seeing history made. So, but I wouldn't be surprised. Last time I picked Joseph Newgarden, he was upside down, so I'm a little worried about that one. So I'm going to go with Alex here.
Top 10 in practice this morning, Joseph Newgarden, number 1. Number 2, Alex Palou. So those are our 2 picks so far. The remaining top 10, Connor Daly, which got to the podium last year, Ryan VK, Marcus Ericsson, Graham Rahal, Scott McLaughlin, Rossi, Rosenquist, and Pato O'Ward.
Wouldn't it be something if Penske swept the last 3 races after being complete non-factors most of the year?
I wouldn't put it as an impossible feat. Newgarden gets it this weekend, and then potentially McLaughlin next weekend. McLaughlin's good in the oval, so I mean, it could be done.
It could be a swap. I mean, didn't McLaughlin win here last year?
Yes, McLaughlin and Pato in a doubleheader. So.
Yep, and then Joseph's going over to Nashville near his hometown. I think that'd be a perfect end into a terrible season for him.
It would be. I think I'm gonna go with Palou though for this race, just because if he wins, then I'll be kicking myself like I should have gone with Palou. But Newgarden is a really good pick. Connor Daly, I think, will be a huge upset winner. But if that team could have the perfect pit stops and he has a good qualifying lap, watch out. I think everyone could be in trouble in the Milwaukee Mile. And, of course, Milwaukee Mile is tomorrow, approximately 90 minutes after the Milwaukee Mile IndyCar race, which is the Snap-on Tools 250. We will be on the air right here on YouTube for Grid Live Wrap-Up to wrap up NASCAR, IndyCar, MotoGP, and the Grid ranking. Getting closer and closer. Only 12 drivers left for the Grid Ranking World Championship. We'll be recapping that. So be sure to subscribe, hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of our programs, and follow us across social media at Grid Network TV and gridnetworktv.com for all our articles. Plus, big thank you to Patreon, calling the show, Mark Rollins, and David Manchin for investing in us. We're going to be out at Portland International Raceway next weekend for the NASCAR Xfinity Series Pacific Office Automation 350 or 250 at Portland International Raceway. And, of course, we're going to have a special video coming out tomorrow, Tanner Smith's interview with Justin Allgaier, Grid Encore. Going to have some discussion about everything from this past weekend, plus a little preview of Portland, and then we'll be on the air starting with Thursday, Friday, and Saturday for the NASCAR Xfinity Series race weekend at Portland International Raceway. Now, before we go off the air, a couple of comments in the chat room. Adams, his pick of winners were Scott Dixon, Mark Marquez, and Todd Gilliland. Todd Gilliland gets a push from Kyle Larson to win at Daytona. That would be an interesting scenario for that to happen. So
to bump his teammate out of the playoffs? I don't know about all that.
Maybe he won't be his teammate next year. Who knows? With Hendrick's, an interesting story over there.
I can only imagine the way that would happen is if Larson, if there was 2 lines, Larson's in the 1 line with Todd Gilliland, and his hopes is push Todd Gilliland into 3, get too far, and then make the pass on him. But yeah, it's going to be very dicey, the finish of this race. It's going to be a lot of fun to see how it all shapes up. Be sure to tune in Sunday when we wrap it all up. For Tanner and Matthew, I'm Joe. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time, and enjoy the races.